All right, guys, thanks for coming here to restorewellness.org. We have Jimbo Collinger to my left, wonderful George Bruneman here, and my name's Keith Hennefeld. We're kind of going to do just a roundtable discussion about a wonderful conversation we had with Dr. Thomas Seyfried, a professor out of Boston University, who is basically the world leader in the way cancer is managed through a mitochondrial diseased issue. So we're trying to target mitochondria and try to improve mitochondrial health and therefore eliminate cancer
and pretty much any other chronic disease at that point.
That's right.
And if you watch the podcast, we're going to try to dumb it down a little bit because it was pretty deep.
He's definitely a professor that likes to use the very difficult.
Yeah, he's a scientist, so it's hard for him to make things a little bit easier to understand. But the biggest takeaway for me is that it doesn't cost you anything to starve cancer.
Right. And not only that, that is the most effective thing. Basically, what he was saying is if you just could go without eating for 2-3 days
At a time.
do that a while, you're going to starve the cancer. You're going to get rid of the dementia problems. You're going to get rid of all of the chronic stuff, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes. They all seem to go along the same thing of eating too many carbs.
Right. And his journey basically started because he was doing research with seizures, and he found out that
Childhood epilepsy.
Right. And he found out that children who starved themselves of sugar, basically they ate well, they ate high protein meals, but didn't do sugar, stopped having seizures. And a long time ago, I had learned that research, and they said that the research that I saw was that if people went to a keto diet as children, that it stopped seizures 50% of the time and reduced seizures the rest of the 50% of the time. So basically 100% of the people benefited from reducing sugars. And then that research, because of grant funding, got moved over into cancer for Thomas Seyfried. And then this is where this all grew from.
Right.
And I think that if we begin to look at this, the reason that cancer forms, it makes sense. Our bodies stop becoming functional beings. We do things that rob our mitochondria of powerful energy because we put stuff into it and our bodies don't know what to do with it.
Well, let's back up a little bit. So mitochondria is what gets energy into the cells so that the cells can live. Mitochondria, through human history, lived off of proteins and fats.
Ketones, yes.
Ketones.
Yes.
It isn't until modern times, and by modern, when they talk about this in the books, is 10,000 years ago when we learned how to farm wheat. It was kind of like that was the downfall of man, was learning how to eat wheat and flour and cakes, and now it's donuts and.
Like Thomas said, we're still Paleolithic man living in modern times with technology.
And our cells still want to live on ketones, and everything we do now with bombarding them with sugar is what's causing all these side effects. And it's making it so that the powerhouse of your cell is no longer functioning correctly.
When you live in a high blood sugar state, you're going to live in a high inflammatory state, and that's where just disease thrives, and in cancer especially. So the moral of the story on the entire podcast is that the supplements and things that you can do to aid and help and use them as pushes is great, but you can get your body into ketosis simply by your diet, exercise, and other therapies like heat exposure and hyperbaric chamber therapy and things like this.
And we can't forget, within paleo mentality, you're right, they did hunt meat, and hunting wasn't an easy job. They had to forage for the right. That wasn't easy. So they were very, very active at all times. At the same time, eating a very clean diet. And if you notice, that doesn't mean that there was piles and plentiful of food. They were going hungry half the time. Exactly. And so starving it at the same time, eating a high quality protein, at the same time, movement and activity. And I believe mitochondria thrives when it's, moving and it's heated and it's constantly being stimulated versus the stagnant stuff that happens. And when things get stagnant, they become dysfunctional, and then that's when disease starts.
So thinking about how, at the end of the day, having a resilient mitochondria is how you're going to live longer and have a healthy life, because with a weak mitochondria, that's where cancer lives. And we've been treating cancer wrong for generations because they think it's a genetic disease, but it's actually
and that was again one of the key things that he went through, was the fact that we're treating it as if it's a genetics problem. Your DNA's messed up, or your parents' DNA was messed up, or bad luck, or you've been radiated. But it turns out it has nothing to do with that. And he went through some of the experiments they've done to prove that, by transplanting the nucleus of one cell to another. But basically, if your cells are running energy efficient, if you're not putting oil into your gas tank and sugar into your gas tank, think about what would happen to a car if you put sugar in the gas tank.
Yes.
It was always our hidden threat.
Right.
We're going to put sugar in your gas tank and it's going to.
And a banana in your tailpipe.
And a banana in your tail. But when your energy system's not working right, nothing's going to work right.
Right.
And if we had a nickel for every time he said the word keto or ketosis in that podcast, we'd be rich.
It's the two fermentable fuels, glucose and glutamine. And the glutamine, we can get into that here in a little bit, which is a little bit trickier. But the glucose aspect of it is something that every person has the ability to do with the choice. Now, is it difficult? Yeah. I mean, who doesn't like good tasting food? Who doesn't like, snacks and sweets? Everybody does. But, what's more important, and I think that if you get yourself dedicated and disciplined to a keto plan, your body will adapt, you'll get results, and you'll improve your life, and you'll kill cancer.
The overarching thing to all of the new books that are out, the Good Energy book from Casey Means, the lies I told, I taught in medical school that we had with Dr. Lufkin a couple of weeks ago, they all come down to the exact same thing: stop eating carbs.
Right.
And we've had talks with a lot of people about that, and everybody keeps coming back, well, I really love bread. Well, okay, maybe you love bread, but do you want to get cancer? Do you want to get type 2 diabetes? Do you want to be, dementia when you get older?
And me and Keith talked about this a lot when we first started working together on these things. And carbohydrates are not a bad thing for healthy, athletic, strong, vibrant individuals.
If you burn them as you eat them.
And so for me, I'm a natural professional bodybuilder, and I train extremely hard, and I've got a lot of muscle mass. So I need carbohydrates. But if I sat still and lost a bunch of my muscle and quit moving and quit being active, and I had started getting metabolic dysfunction and lost my metabolism, then carbohydrates are going to be bad for me because my body doesn't need them. They're not using them. So it's like filling up your gas tank, and when it's full, you just keep on pumping gas in, and it's just overflowing out of the side of the car. You don't need it. You're
right.
Full. Your stores are full. You don't need any more.
You're just carrying extra weight around.
And as it flows over, that's just flowing over into disease state.
And you're losing horsepower and everything else to it. Yeah.
So the cause and effect between what you eat and how you feel, all the way from, inflammation to, type 2 diabetes to cancer, is tied to that. The other interesting thing is, every time you hear someone talk about, I was just diagnosed with cancer, it's like, oh, I'm so sorry, you're going to die really soon now. And in the overwhelming opinion of Seyfried in all this conversation was, you don't have to die.
It's encouraging. He said, he goes, people get cancer, they get all freaked out, they got the angel of death, looking over their shoulder, and that's the way society looks at it, because that's what we've been taught to think. There's an answer.
We've had, patients who come to see us, and they get excited about what we're offering them, and then they go see their oncologist, and then they're stricken with fear because that's their approach. Well, you've got 3 months to live, and we can try to make you comfortable, and this radiation or chemotherapy might help you, live for a couple more weeks in comfort, and this and this and this. And they really do paint doom instead of saying, wait a minute, let's take some time and talk about a diet. Let's talk about your activity and exercise. How well are you breathing? Are you taking mindful breaths and meditating? Then there's emerging evidence now that says your mind and how you play the game has a lot to do with your outcome.
Absolutely.
And if you feel defeated, you will be defeated. If you feel successful and optimistic, you'll move forward. And that's why it's also very good to have a good coach in your healthcare team, someone who's going to be promoting you to do the best thing that you can do. And sometimes when people are feeling weak and they're feeling desperate, what they really need to do is they need to lean on the people that they love and trust them and move forward in their healing journey. And that simply could be like, okay, what's next? What do I need to do? Yes, I'll do that. Okay, I'll do that. Because they're thinking about all the other things. And then that's another thing. We're going to be having a gentleman named David Dalen Fisher on as a podcast. And the reason I'm having him on there is because he has a unique way of getting people into the right mindset. We bring all the baggage into our life that can interfere with our decision making, our optimism, or even our self-worth. And I think we can't move the ball on helping ourselves get self-care until we understand our worth. And I know I've been talking a lot about this lately, but I think it's really, really important when hey, you're worth it. You live a very strong life. You're a great father or a great mother, and they need you and we need you. So let's start doing the right things that it takes in order to get you on the right road.
Well, and the other thing is to find that drive to do the right thing. So if you would have seen me 20 years ago in my 40s, I had inflammation problems, but I was in pretty decent shape, eating the same crap that we've been talking about that you shouldn't be eating. To try and get my 40-year-old self to say, I need to go to keto would have been very difficult. Fast forward to, I get a heart stent, I'm having knee troubles. Now keto's starting to sound a little better. And a year and a half ago, when my wife and I started down this latest journey that's resulted in this Restore Wellness, we used to do keto to lose weight. But after doing all of the reading, that's the wrong reason to do it. The reason you're doing it is because you want to be healthy. You want to be able to live with the great-grandchildren if you can. And it's that impetus. So if you see 40-year-old George, there's no way he's going to start keto, maybe to lose a couple of pounds, but there was no drive for that. If you fast forward and you say, okay, you've just had a heart stent, you better figure out what the heck's going on there. There's a little more. And take it to the thing where we've been talking about people that we know that have been diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer. Well, suddenly now it's like, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. Of course, it's way too late. So the whole problem is, how do you get people incentivized while they're healthy to start changing their habits so they stay that way?
And George, this is exactly, it's kind of interesting that you're talking about this, because we have a medical situation that we want to resolve. And then I'm saying, well, let's do this by optimizing mitochondria, which is wellness. And then that's kind of where I brought you into my life, is to be able to say, okay, what's the next step? Because I've managed illness so long in my life, I need to learn how to manage wellness. And what does getting well look like? And I know that the power behind building muscle has such a profound effect on longevity, and it is the most anti-aging thing we can do. And Jimbo, that's why I think your process and the way you look at life is such beneficial to what we're doing here at the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're talking about, the anti-aging effects of resistance training. And we talked about it with Thomas Seyfried the other day. He talked about, having muscle mass is going to burn more fuel. It's going to burn up all your glucose. And we don't have to overcomplicate this. This is not, like he said, this is not rocket science. This is not new news. We had, the Warburg effect. Otto Warburg in the 1920s discovered that cancer is a metabolic disease. And here we are still treating it wrong after all these
chemo, radiation.
And let's take a second to talk about why we're treating it wrong. We're treating it wrong because Rockefeller purchased all those papers and buried them.
Yes.
Because you can't make money by not eating.
Yeah.
You can only make money by selling pills. And that's exploded.
Hitler didn't lock up Warburg in the chambers because he knew he was the guy on the planet that could cure cancer.
And he was scared of cancer. He had a lot of paranoia.
He was afraid of cancer. Right. And so it's pretty remarkable to think that, if it wasn't for Rockefeller, Warburg would have been the guy to cure cancer. Today, we would not be there'd probably be no such thing as chemotherapy.
105 years ago. Think about that. 105 years ago, he had the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's talk about that.
And the answer is your own effort. That's the thing. The answer is not in a pill. The answer is not in some kind of a pharmaceutical drug. The answer is in your own choices you make. And there's a protocol. And again, it's just a matter of doing the work and putting in the effort and making it a lifestyle.
And the goal is really to extend your life in a healthy, strong manner. And that's kind of what I'm realizing, that, we're given a certain time frame when you're diagnosed with cancer, but through the Seyfried process and everybody really dialing down on their diet, their activity, their discipline, you're going to extend exponentially your life expectancy. And
it will still be high quality all the way to the end.
Because your mitochondria are functioning at its optimum at most times.
And he talked about that. He said a lot of their patients and people who have passed away, he said, the thing is these people, nobody was wasting away and suffering and wasting away from the chemotherapy and the radiation, these different toxic therapies. He said these people were like active up until the day before they passed away. They had a good quality life that they were adding 5 to 8 years on to people's life who were stage 4 cancer. These are things that you're not going to hear in traditional medicine.
Well, and what you do see is I just keep coming back to when my father was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. Up until then, you didn't mess with my dad. He would have put you down. But by the end there, once he was diagnosed, well, now we got to start the chemo. And then they found out it went to his brain. They got to do the radiation. By the end, it hurt him for me to pick him up and put him in bed. I mean, this is a guy that was, his entire life was a strong guy. And now the cancer treatment had him so depleted that he wasn't the same person anymore. Everything that we talked about in that podcast said, not only are we going to make the cancer go away, if not totally, we're going to make you feel even better than you feel.
People get healthier in the process of doing the nutritional ketosis to kill their cancer. While they're making their healthy cells stronger, they're killing off the cancer cells. Cancer is, he's like he said, the cancer cells are not smart. They cannot survive in a with oxygen state.
Yeah.
You know,
Oxygen ketosis state.
Yeah.
Right. And, a lot of people are wondering, well, what does keto mean? And does that mean that I'm having to sit there and only eat fats and what have you? And I try to teach eggs. I try to teach people, the most important organ when it comes to surviving when you don't eat is your liver. Your liver's number one job is so that you live when you don't eat. And a lot of people don't get the opportunity to let the liver do its job to get into ketosis because we're constantly eating versus taking the time to say, hey, liver, you want to wake up today? I'm not going to eat today. So how about you turn all of our stored energy into ketones, which are a fantastic energy source for
Brain
ATP
food.
to use it. Exactly. And so if we can say, hey, how long has it been since I've actually let my liver turn on and do its job? And then let that process work. And that's simply through, it can be lean green protein. It can be avocados and nuts and cottage cheese and chicken and fish and I already said avocado and meat too. Red meat's good. I like not promote too much red meat, but I definitely like the.
well, there's a ton of options, and that's the thing. You can actually, protein and fat is more dense. It digests slower. There's more satiety. So when you eat carbohydrates, it actually makes you hungrier. So, and I know this because from all of my years of bodybuilding, dieting, and cutting diets, I've done it all, and I've felt every phase of dieting that you can experience. When you go into and when you fast, talk about water fasting. I've implemented some fasting for myself. At first you're kind of hungry, and next thing you know, your appetite goes away. Because that's when your body starts tapping into the stored energy that's in your liver, and so you're like, I'm not even hungry. And then that's why sometimes a 16-hour fast is harder than a 36-hour fast, because you get past that part, then it's like, oh, this isn't so bad.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because the word you heard most often after keto in that podcast was fasting. So there's a whole bunch of fads. Well, let's not call them fads. Maybe there is some techniques. So you've got I'm going to do a daily fast where every day I only eat during 8 hours, and the other 16 I don't eat anything. I just have water. Intermittent fasting. Then when I met Keith, he's talking about, well, you need to try a 3 or 4 day fast, and I'm like, you're out of your friggin' brain.
Yeah,
but the more you read about it, and like you were just saying about the liver, so what are the effects of a 16-8 intermittent fast versus 1, 2, 3, 4 days? I think on the podcast, he mentioned somebody that actually made it 30 days.
Well, I've heard a lot. Well, there's the 30-day fasting. I've heard about this. I heard about this for starving cancer before I even heard about Thomas Seyfried. And they say, talk about some mental toughness, right? But when you do that, your body just eats that cancer away. It can't survive, because it's going to get chewed up as fuel. And then your body, and like he said,
But you got to be in the right state.
for somebody who's got a strong health environment going to.
So let's start at the beginning. 16-8 fasting. What happens? Why is that effective? Why is it not effective?
I think 16-8 fasting allows a couple of things. Number one, you get calorie restriction. So you're not eating too much. Therefore, you're reducing your glycemic index. Number two, you are allowing your liver to work in that phase of energy sourcing. You're not necessarily getting apoptosis, which is cellular breakdown, but you are getting into ketosis in the beginning stages where you're starting to break down fat, and your stomach's getting a rest, and the blood flow moves away from your gut, moves into your muscles and your organs and your brain, and you're optimizing your daily activities that way versus always digesting food, and half of your blood is in your gut and the other half is where it needs to be. And so I think that it is optimal to operate on a daily basis in some form of calorie restriction and limited eating. In fact, I think the 3 meal a day thing is nothing but a monetary gain for the food industry.
Yeah, I don't see anybody saying you should be eating 3 times a day. And then for a while there, the thing was eat small things all day long.
Well, and like Keith mentioned, the people don't realize the importance of gut health. And gut health can be the foundation of all of your health. Again, it helps with, having a resilient mitochondria, your microbiome, all that plays a major role. And it's just like with resistance training, with working out. You don't work the same muscle every single day, all day long, because it needs to heal. Your stomach needs to heal. So implementing some fasting through the week, shorter windows of fasting, is healthy and beneficial for anybody.
So you're getting a benefit because you're relaxing your stomach. You're forcing the liver to kick in and start creating ketones. That's intermittent. What happens with 1, 2, 3 day fasts?
So that's when you start getting cellular regeneration, apoptosis.
Autophagy and stuff.
You get the old cells broken down. But in the beginning phase, let's say day 1, day 2, really what's happening at that point in time, your gut's completely rested. The blood flow is then migrated. Your appetite begins to decrease. Your gut inflammation decreases. So your body's general inflammatory cytokine storms begin to calm down. So now you're able to move through the system without inflammation. And that's causing less damage right there to begin with. When you move into day 2 and day 3, now you're starting to get into autophagy, thank you. And apoptosis, what I call is where your body is chewing on cells that it doesn't need.
It's getting rid of the trash. He talks about kill the cells, getting rid of the cells.
Kill the corpses, get rid of the corpses. Kill the corpses, get rid of the corpses. Yeah.
And the most important thing to be able to be in this situation too is it's okay to be doing muscle activity there, because you want to be able to make sure that you're maintaining muscle mass and telling the cells to get rid of the cells that you don't need.
And I think having a balance, like I want to, the plan that I would have for my dad would be, if I could get him, get his weight back up healthy, and all that. But once he gets a little bit stronger, is maybe implement a day a week where we do like a 24-hour fast to really deplete out his system, and then try to get his carb management under control. And we got to talk about the GKIs, the glucose ketose indicator, which Seyfried, we need to find out
where that.
Well, there's different ones out there. He's got the one he's working on now, which I think is really exciting, and this would help, because the question I had for him was, what do you do for the people who you're just begging them to do the plan? You can't get them to do it, and they just don't have the discipline to make those decisions. Like what? And this tool that he's going to have, and he said it wasn't out yet, but their app will be basically, you have a continuous glucose monitor on you, and you're going to have it on your app, and it's going to show your blood sugar. It's going to show your millimolar numbers of your ketones, and if you eat a Snickers bar, like he said, and that thing shoots up in the red, it's going to say, hey, you're feeding your cancer right now. How do you like that?
You're dying now.
Do you like feeding your cancer right now? And then when you eat this, it shows, oh, your numbers are looking good. You're feeding you. You're starving your cancer right now. That right there, if somebody could look at that every day, and every day they're making choices, every moment of every day we make choices. And every moment of every day we make that choice, you're going to look at that thing and say, wow, I don't want to feed my cancer right now. So this is a great tool that I would definitely want to speak with him further on and learn more about what we can do with that.
Now you're getting into my nerd side. I'd love to be working on that one. That would be right up my alley.
Yeah.
I'd love to play with it.
Yeah.
So the idea is, we know now what at least part of the solution, if not the majority of it is. It's to get your body into ketosis, get away from the carbs, strength training, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of them recommend actually heavy weights, not just, little rubber bands every now and then. They want you to go heavy. Why is that the big deal? Why is heavy different?
It's heavy. I mean, sets and reps are going to matter with resistance training, and it depends on the person's level. I mean, resistance training is important for children and elderly people and everybody in between. If you're a human being walking around, resistance training is important for you. It's the key to longevity. And when you do a good amount of volume sets and reps with resistance training, you're burning up the stored energy in the muscle, the glucose or the glycogen. And so you do glycogen depletion training, you're just going to start pulling them stores out and then get yourself into ketosis quicker.
Right.
And so and he was like Thomas said about the monitor, about the indicator there, if a person's getting their metabolism resilient and they're living in ketosis and their numbers are good right there, they could possibly eat a small amount of carbohydrates, right? As long as your numbers aren't going to there, as long as you're staying in that range, you might be able to get away with some of those things, but you don't know until you get your body there consistently.
And I'm wondering how long it takes to say, well, it's just not worth it. I remember when we first started into the keto thing, and I learned about, sugary drinks, pops,
oh my God,
and how
why actually works the carbs. I mean, if you're gonna eat carbs or sugar, why would you drink it? Eat it. You know what I mean? If you're gonna do
well, and so at the beginning it was like, wow, I really miss those Diet Cokes. I used to I would pound Diet Coke.
Diet Coke or real Coke?
Diet Coke, which is even worse than real Coke because the aspartame in there really screws up your insulin.
We can do another podcast on that one.
Right. Well, but what I'm getting at is it took reading enough books to say how much that's killing you to do that. That now the thought of, walking up to a spigot in the truck stop and getting, my 36 ounce of Coca-Cola, there's just no way I would do it. I just can't do it anymore.
Right. And that goes back to dopamine. Dopamine is usually released when people do sugar and carbohydrates or these chemicals that are put in a lot of this Diet Coke stuff. And so what does that mean? You're trying to feed a dopamine receptor, meaning you're trying to make yourself feel better, which goes again back to that what's going on in the mental space and the self-care space. But to go back to your statement, as far as building muscle goes, muscle is a surface area item. The larger muscle you have, the more surface area you have for glucose to be utilized. So if you have small muscles or old muscles, then those receptor sites are filled and everything is like just not absorbing well. But then if you break open, create new muscle, and also make larger surface area muscle, then that sugar is going to have more places to dump into, get utilized, and get eliminated from the system. And so I think that's why it's even important for older people to really say, hey, I know that you're not feeling well, but go out there, make it happen, build new muscle. And those hormones inside those muscles, the new muscles, will stimulate you to feel better, will get rid of depression, get rid of anxiety. It's been known to help out with PTSD rewiring. So there's just so many global benefits of exercising. And the fact is that people think that exercising is for certain people, the yoga pant wear people, or the people that, have their little niches like Jim, but it's not. It is as important as breathing and eating and sleeping.
And we talked about it in the podcast we did a while back, and I talked about the importance of the most active tissue in the human body is muscle. And the studies show that the most important organ in the human body is skeletal muscle, and especially the quadriceps, because when the quadriceps atrophy, because of lack of movement, you start to move less, you age quicker, and that's when disease thrives.
Well, let's talk about the two things that are always hiding in the background. The first one is you think you have to go to a doctor before you can get started. I think the message loud and clear here is no, just stop eating carbs, start moving, start working out.
And hydrate. People forget about hydration.
Oh, and water. So exercise, water, and no carbs.
And we talked about this when we on the last one, and I said, I'm a health and fitness guy. I'm a health and fitness nutrition guy, not a disease guy. I never have been. But when my dad got diagnosed with cancer, I got obsessed with learning cancer. I needed to learn everything I could, and I wanted to find out everything I possibly could about it and know the truth about it. And I think about this all the time. If you get diagnosed with a disease tomorrow, I don't understand why that person wouldn't want to go learn. I would be obsessed trying to figure it all out.
Oh, yeah.
So you can choose your own destiny and have your own answers versus trusting the system. And so that's what I've done with the cancer space and understanding. And it's encouraging to understand the truth and that we have answers. And
and the answer is not something you have to pay for.
Right.
It's easy. Let's talk about the more evil side of it is, and Seyfried mentioned it multiple times, cancer is $1 trillion industry.
Mm-hmm.
So the answer is watch what you eat and take care of yourself. But the answer we're being told is you need $100,000 chemo treatments. You need to be on statins your entire life. You need to be taking insulin your entire life. Metformin, GLP-1s. I mean, all this crazy stuff is because, go back to 1920s again when the answer to cancer was there and they buried it because you can't make money off of it. So it was interesting that, we know when the cigarette companies were going down because of the Surgeon General putting the warning on the package, those same scientists were then applied to the cigarette companies, went and bought up all the food companies and used the same technology. The reason we have high fructose corn syrup is it's addictive and it doesn't fill your hunger. You're hungrier after you have it than you are before. How do we get at that profit?
Well, really, what I want to do too is I don't want to blame the doctors, because the doctors, if you look at the insurance companies that drive their paycheck, the insurance companies have made it a very, very strict thing that you have to check these boxes in order for your job to be able to be paid for by the insurance company. And so the doctors are literally spinning their wheels trying to check these boxes off so that they can guarantee that the insurance will reimburse that particular visit or that particular therapy. And if we could eliminate the insurance companies, ridiculous rhetoric and allow doctors to function in their mind space, in their heart space, instead of their paycheck space, or even, I got to keep my job space.
Right.
And they start being able to do what they really probably deep down in their gut feel
What they
like
started off studying
so many
medicine to do.
So many doctors are getting out of the industry because they're tired of making little check boxes and they're not getting in there with their patients. Their patients aren't getting healthier. They're still taking statins. Their cholesterol is high. They're still having heart attacks. They're still getting fat. They still have diabetes. They're not curing anything.
Well, and a lot of it is also, I mean, like I said, their motivation's in the right place. I would assume most of them, but it's a level of indoctrination too. It's a program. If you look at the medical schooling that Rockefeller set up back then, kids in med school today are being taught the same thing. There's a program, there's a system, and that is their authority. That's their God, and that's what they go by. And
Because they won't get in trouble if they do.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to go back to something you said before about the nutrition, about eating all the fake foods and stuff like that. I saw a study recently talking about indirectly your body is desiring protein, even though you might not crave it or might not desire it, but you'll keep on eating and eating and eating till your body gets the protein that it needs. And most people, it's like 0.6 grams per pound, just to be minimal, just to be at a minimal state. And so if you wake up in the morning and you eat cereal, okay, and then you have, you have some crackers, and then you're eating no whole protein sources. You know how many bags of potato chips you'd have to eat to get your needs for protein?
I don't think you can.
I mean, so you're going to keep eating and eating and eating and eating because your body, like Seyfried said, we're still Paleolithic modern day man.
Amen.
You're trying to, your body, God made it so that your body will get the protein that it needs for the day, and you'll keep eating until you get that. So think about if you wake up in the morning and you eat a high protein source of real whole foods, eggs and meats and things like that, and you get in the habit of doing that, you're going to hit your hunger levels much sooner, and you'll have satiety, and you won't be craving all this crazy stuff.
Sorry, I had to take a photo moment. That's just how I do things around here. So let's kind of rewind a little bit. We're talking about Seyfried stuff. We talked about glucose a lot. We talked about diet. We talked about exercise. Let's talk about glutamine. And you mentioned it's a very complicated process. Glutamine is an amino acid that our body needs. It fuels our cells. It's
the most abundant amino acid in the human body. It's also responsible for our white blood cell count and responsible for our microbiome and our gut health. And so this is the tricky part. And like Steve says, there's no diet that you use to get rid of glutamine. I've supplemented glutamine as a bodybuilder for many years because it's great for being anabolic and recovering and healing. And nobody knows it. It's also a fermented fuel that feeds cancer along with glucose. So that's the tricky part. And that's where we got to get into. Seyfried's talking about there's medications for that to try to start blocking these the glutamine. And one that does it is benbenzidol and fembenzidol, and that's the only ones that he's done the particular research on.
Right.
We got into a little bit of the
parasitic,
but ivermectin, fembenzidol, and those things like that because they're all parasitic drugs, which is a repurposed drug, right? Discovered that it's
I will have to say, I wish that Thomas Seyfried was a little more open. It seemed like he wasn't as open to the supplemental side of things, probably because that's not his space.
That's not his space.
And
he's a scientist.
And I will try to include in our website there's 6 supplements that I know of right now that are kind of designed to help lower your excess of glutamine, or at least binding your excess glutamine. Berberine, obviously, anybody who's in the anti-cancer space hears about berberine because it lowers glycemic indexes, but at the same time, it does have glutamine blockers. Green tea extract, resveratrol, vitamin C. Everybody knows about vitamin C in that situation. There's too. So there's some neat things. I'll put a list down on our website so you can take a look at those in case you're wanting to start some of the supplements for glutamine blockers. And interestingly, in Thomas Seyfried, what I thought one of his most powerful graphs is when he was talking about the mice model, where in the mice model, you can control their diet, you can control their activity, you can put them on wheels and whatever have you. And what he showed is that if he did everything that the human beings normally do, diagnosis glioblastoma and they die, glioblastoma and they died. But when you took away their sugar, that curve didn't drop as far, and it just was more longer, and so they lived longer. But then when he did the ketosis and glutamine blockers, boom, it was a straight line. They didn't die.
The pulse get rid of the glutamine.
Press pulse.
Yeah. So you press the keto ketosis the whole time, and then you pulse whether or not you have the glycogen there.
And I think that you also have to pulse intermittent fasting, right? He did mention that you pulse intermittent fasting. You just don't go starve yourself to death. But keto, intermittent fasting, keto, intermittent fasting, on top of glutamine blockers. And that keeps it
And
pretty.
how much does that cost to do?
You know, last time I checked, good grass-fed beef.
It costs a little bit of discipline, a little bit of effort. That's what it costs. You know? And so that's the good news for anybody listening to this. You know, anybody who's been diagnosed with cancer, who has cancer, it's not a death sentence.
And let's end on that one, because I think that's that's the entire thing this week has taught us, is it's not a death sentence. It doesn't have to mean, well, of course I look at you and I, it doesn't have to mean all your hair is going to fall out a little late, but it means it's up to you. It's not up to which doctor you pick. It's up to you doing what you have to do to get through this. And oh, by the way, don't wait until it's too late. You can start it today.
And take your leadership of your healthcare back from the doctors. So many times you just say, okay, doctor, do whatever you want. And we need to take that back and say, I agree with this, doctor. I'm going to do, how about we do microdosing of the chemotherapy, and let's not do radiation. We're going to work on this for a little bit. And if things are looking pretty good, we'll just stay with this path and really take ownership, take a little bit of leadership in the doctor's office, because now you're educated, and that's when education becomes power.
And that's what I would say too. I mentioned that earlier, is that educate yourself. This is your body. This is your life. You need to learn everything you possibly can about the disease and become an expert yourself. And just don't rely on somebody else who's telling you what they know from their perspective. Learn the truth. The truth is out there. Figure it out. Get obsessed with it. Okay. Become an expert in it for yourself. And then you can save your own life.
Well, we hope this helps. If you've got any questions, you can reach us, info@restorewellness.org. Our phone number is 513-400-4228. You can get us on the web. You can look at us on X. Get informed, but know that this is your choice. You have everything you need to start living a better life.
Yeah. And restore your wellness.
Yeah, sure.